Hello again and thanks for joining. Today I've got another vintage model to have a look at. This time it's from Piko and it's this Schnellzuglokomotive. I think I pronounced that correctly. Obviously an electric locomotive, and there's quite a nice attractive drawing on the front of the box. You can see the locomotive has CSD, so that's Czech Republic, but I think this might have been from Czechoslovakian times. It says E499.2 on the side of the box there. But on the end of the box here it says it's an EVP67 and the part number is 56220. So it's a bit confusing, this one, and there's an additional confusion as well. I'll open up this box and I'll show you. So no prizes for spotting the difference. It's actually blue and not red. But before we look at it in more detail, we do have an instruction sheet here with a nice technical drawing of the locomotive and some details about it down here. This is all in German, so I don't speak German, so I don't know what it's saying, but I can see the CSD logo, so I'm guessing it's just talking about it running in service. Inside we've got some technical detail about the model and also how to take it apart and service it, with these pictures here showing you more details of that. And on the back it looks as though it has some switch here, possibly this is to pick up from overhead electrics. And then we have another little switch here as well. Quite intriguing because I don't know what this says. And we also have this really old piece of paper here which seems to be a dealer list, and it does have up here November 1984, which possibly gives you an idea about when this locomotive was produced. So here is the model out of the box, and it certainly looks quite imposing and it's quite impressive as well. It's an interesting design, a locomotive with some really interesting angles on it, so I think we should have a closer look. So I still don't know why this one is in blue and not red like the box would imply. But certainly at the front here we've got a lot of character on this locomotive. It's all about the lights. I'm hoping these are going to be illuminated because we've got 4 down here and then we've got another 2 up here in this little cowl. What you can spot straight away though is this strange affair with the windows. They're very clear and we've got these nice windscreen wipers moulded into the plastic, but it looks like there's a piece of cardboard in behind it that you can't see inside this model, and that's pretty strange. It's quite unusual for a model to have that, even if it's just all motor inside. It's got this moulded in handrail going across the front here with another one down the side here, and they're not picked out in any colour at all. We've got another one in between the windows there too. And here's where we start to see some problems with the paintwork. It's a bit fuzzy along this join here between the cream and the blue, and you can also see that there's a bit of fading inside that cowl there. Further down we've got a nice transfer of the star there and the number of this locomotive, and then the buffer beam is quite plain. It's got some dummy couplings there. These buffers are added in pieces, and there are a set of these Piko ones which are bendy as well, which I really like actually because it'll take a knock and not break, and these are always the things that break off. So I quite like that about Piko at the time when they made these wobbly buffers. As we start to look down the side of the locomotive, again we've got some issues with the paint. It's very fuzzy in certain places, and then the grey is not any better really. It's got a bit of a fuzziness here as well in this part, but it is an interesting paint job with this triangular part coming down here. We have a number 1 printed there and some more numbers underneath the cab door there and down here as well. The printing is really crisp though, and the moulding is good too, with a lot of nice relief here. These handrails aren't extra pieces, they're just part of the main moulding, but they do look pretty good I think, and the detail on the main moulding continues all the way down the length of the locomotive, very characterful. The door window here is flush fit, but you can see that the windows further down are not, and these don't have that strange piece of cardboard behind the windows for some reason. And then as we come to the middle of the locomotive, there's another panel here moulded in, very nicely done, and then there's some more printing here of the number and the CSD logo. Then finally at number 2 end, we've got some more details printed here, very clear. You've even got this little Škoda logo here, which I guess gives you an indication of the manufacturer of this locomotive. I didn't actually know that they did locomotives back then, but there you go, there's a Škoda logo there. But up here you can see that the paintwork has got this same issue where it's a bit fuzzy along the edges here on this dark grey and the cream. Nothing different at number 2 end here, and we've got the same problems with the paint as well. So looking on top, there's a lot of detail up here which I really like, but there are paint problems along the top there as well. Again, the masking isn't very good. These horns are an extra piece that's been added in, and then we get these pantographs which are made of metal and they're sprung loaded. They're really quite good, and they've got the copper run along the top there. I haven't seen in the instructions that this is switchable to overhead power. It looks as though this one perhaps has been run with the overhead electrics at some point in its life. But we've got these parts here added in as extras, these insulators, and there's this little metal wire as well running between the two. So I'm really liking all the extra details that have been put on top of this locomotive. The central part is this silver piece here with some really nice deep relief on these grills here, and very characterful of this locomotive. They're only on one side, but on this side of the locomotive there's a different part here which is an additional piece which has been added in this kind of fawn colour plastic, and we have these 2 large sets of silver grills here. Again, painting problems. It's a bit fuzzy down the bottom there. So looking down below, we have a couple of little snowplows here in the blue colour, and it's all integral into this large bogie here. This is an all plastic moulding which has got some really deep relief on it, especially around the springs and the axle boxes here and these springs here as well. Very characterful wheels as well with these spokes, and the spokes are made of plastic with metal surrounds. The coupling hangs out the front here on this little piece of metal, but this is actually made of plastic and it's held on with this screw here, so you can change it if you want to. And we have another screw here at the back holding this bogie together. These wheels are not driven, and I think they just pick up, and they don't revolve very freely either. Here we have this switch. I guess that's for overhead at the top or just two rail pickup at the bottom, and we have a little bit of detail on this plastic moulding in the middle here. The other bogie at this end is exactly the same, apart from the fact that this is driven and it seems to have traction tyres fitted on all four wheels as well. There is a bit of moulding issue here as well though on this bogie. So very characterful, but suffering from a bit of bad paintwork here. I think we should put this on the test track and see how it runs. Okay, here we have it on the test track. I've not tried it before, so let's give it some power and see what happens. So no problems there at all. The model just ran perfectly straight away. It's a little bit noisy as you would expect from an older model, but it certainly crawls along at a nice speed. Didn't have any problems. But I'm interested to see what the mechanism was like because it didn't look as though the lighting was working, and I was really hoping for that. So let's open this up and take a look. So the body shell has a huge weight on the inside. This is where all the weight of the model is because the chassis is just made pretty much all of plastic. So it's very top heavy. You can see that it does actually pick up from the overhead here and transfer the power to this metal weight, and then it transfers it to the chassis. We do have an indication of lighting here, and you can see that strange piece of cardboard inside the window there. The chassis is quite light. We've got two metal pieces running the length of the chassis. Everything else is plastic. We do indeed have bulbs here, but they just don't seem to be working. It's possibly just with age. It is rather a large motor, which I think is really good, but it does have all this plastic gearing, which I think would be its Achilles heel and possibly cause some problems if it was run for a very long time. This part here connects up to the metal weight, which we saw inside the body, and obviously transfers the power down to the chassis. So it's quite an interesting construction of chassis, this one, with the two side rails and then the rest of the parts being added on as plastic pieces. So I've got this model back together at last. I actually don't think I needed to take off the buffers in order to be able to get this model apart, and they were a right faff to get back together. But anyway, this model weighs 334 grams. So this E499 model from Piko is quite an interesting model to have a look at. It's certainly an incredibly cool looking design, I think. Very retro looking, but it's got that kind of edge of almost like a science fiction style to it. It's certainly very quirky with its grille arrangement, different on each side. And this paint job is quite an interesting combination of grey, cream and blue. And I certainly like the triangular parts at the front of the cab. Some of the things I like include the equipment on the roof, which is very detailed. There's a lot of extra little parts there, and the pantographs are really good looking as well. The body moulding as well is quite good. There's a good amount of relief in the moulding, and there's some nice grille detail as well. And I really like those bendy buffers too. The spoked wheels are also very characterful as well. And the mechanics of this model, it runs really well. I don't think it should do because I don't think the chassis is very good. It could have benefited from being made of metal, I think. It could have benefited from being all made of metal. But yet it actually runs really well, and I'm quite impressed with that. But there are some clear things that let this model down, not least of which is the paint job. The colour combination is really good, but the masking is terrible with a lot of fuzziness and bits that are not correct. The fact that it's got cardboard at the front windows as well is a bit odd. I don't like that either. And the lighting is absolutely terrible. It definitely needs an upgrade. So should you consider buying this model? I think if you're modelling the CST railways, you've got limited choice, and this is a very characterful locomotive, and I think it would be a great addition to your layout. However, you have to put up with this really bad paint job, which I don't think is just specific to this one, which really lets it down. However, I do think the mechanics will run good enough. So therefore, it's more a kind of run-of-the-mill model, which will do sterling work, but it isn't a display model, unless you wanted to repaint it. So let me know what you thought about my analysis of this model in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think about this. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See ya.
Think about it. Always.